Hello, good afternoon. I would love to talk with you about the advice of the Dutch Council for Culture on a national policy framework for colonial collections. It was made at the request of the Minister for Culture and published on October 7 last year. The advice states that many colonial cultural objects came to the Netherlands against the will of their owners, and this is historical injustice visible in many Dutch museums, and the Netherlands should declare itself prepared to rectify it. Cultural goods looted from former Dutch colony must be unconditionally returned if the country of origin so requests. And the Netherlands may no longer impose conditions on what the recipient country will do with it afterwards. The advice suggests a broader range of objects for which the minister must consider restitution. Among them, objects from countries that were not a Dutch colony, but which have a special meaning for that country. But I say beware, because this latter type of requests will not be granted unconditionally. The judgment on it must be weighed up in reasonableness and fairness and consider how important is this object for the Netherlands and for the country of origin. And what about storage conditions and accessibility after return? The advice is progressive and groundbreaking, and this is partially a result of the composition of the advisory committee. Most members were Dutch people, but they have strong roots in former colonies and are able to think from different perspectives. Allow me to make some critical comments. The first one is about provenance research. The advice is outspoken about the need for it, but it fails to indicate how museums can strike a balance between this time-consuming and costly research on the one hand, and the large number of dubiously acquired objects awaiting investigation on the other. Now let me give two examples to explain what I mean. In March 2020, the Netherlands handed over the kris, or stabbing weapon, of Indonesia's national hero, Prince Diponegoro. He was the hero of the early 19th century anti-colonial Java War. Indonesia had asked for it in 1975, and the Netherlands then had agreed to track it down. Only in 2017 did researchers of Museum Volkenkunde really start their investigation. And even then it took them 2.5 years to discover it in their own storerooms. The second example is the canon of the King of Kandy. In that same 2017, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam began a pilot study into 10 colonial objects. And one of these is the cannon from Sri Lanka, captured in 1765 by soldiers of the Dutch East India Company. In 2019, so 2 years later, a museum delegation visited its counterparts in Sri Lanka. The announcement of the delegation upon its arrival that it had come to do research and not to discuss return caused quite some frustration and irritation. A final report is planned for 2021. By then, the canon of the King of Kandy will have been the topic of 4 years of research. The kris and the canon are two objects out of thousands that, according to the advice, need to be investigated. Now, my question is, and maybe you'll think about an answer with me, should there be some kind of a general pardon for objects that are believed to be spoils of war, so that room is created for research into other objects? My second comment is on a European perspective. The advice mentions both the Washington Principles for dealing with Nazi looted art and the 2007 UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, but it fails to raise the question whether similar principles or a similar declaration is needed for dubiously acquired colonial objects. Do you think it should be there. Should like-minded countries in Europe come up with an initiative for it? To be frank, my experience in the Global South is that such a Europe-wide initiative could restore some of the distrust created in the colonial and post-colonial period. And trust building is one of the most crucial elements in the whole restitution debate. Thank you very much.